On.
Mics are on.
This is Wednesday, January 4th. The time is 5:18 PM. And this is the Municipal Parking Advisory Committee. And let's say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Then we have Tim Walsh.
Here.
Dave, have you met Tim?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We know, we've met before.
Okay, Jim. Bob. Dave. Mark. Me.
It's just like attendance by recognition.
Right, and Martin's in the audience. Martin is a member of the MTRAC committee.
The what, I'm sorry?
MTRAC, the Municipal Taxation Revenue Advisory Committee.
Not Amtrak.
I always,
Amtrak.
I mean, I know how much you're dedicated to railroad service, but it's not.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Second the motion.
Okay. And you know what's funny?
You do need a vote, you do need a vote on it.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You have to abstain.
You can
Minutes, I'm
actually,
sorry,
you can do
right.
anything you want.
Yeah, that's true. I have to tell you, I had to go back and look at the recording because the meeting was at the beginning of December, and I couldn't remember everything, so, and my notes were kind of sketchy. So, the focus of this meeting is, well, number one, we were sorely neglected at the council meeting, the reorganization meeting last night, and there was no mention of the Parking Advisory Committee and the related reappointment of a liaison. Stacy was our liaison, and she's no longer in office. So I don't know who our liaison is.
Just to point out for the benefit of any council members listening, that it is customary for the advisory committees to each have a liaison with city council, and it would really behoove council to tell us who that would be.
And, you know, if I had known who it would have been, I would have contacted them to, you know, remind them that there was a meeting today, but
So why didn't they act on anything?
don't know.
Well, if you want to go back to the proposed ordinance and background of that,
Go ahead.
is that okay now, or whenever you want to handle that? The fact that the ordinance was going to be proposed, and we tried to set the stage for that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
To
I mean,
just
whenever
review
you
some
want.
of the things that occurred since our last meeting. Stacy was trying to get enough votes on council in order to pass the ordinance that addressed our recommendations for changes to traffic flow on Jackson Street. And she was not getting a sense that she had approval. So she suggested that, and Jim prepared the supplemental document that we presented to them and shared that, you know, we were all willing to meet. with
Right, I
any of
remember
the
that.
council
Right, and
members.
you saw the text
Yes.
of the ordinance,
Yes.
right? So that statement was made in support of the text with all the arguments we had
Right. I
discussed
remember it
around the
was
table. And
Very positive.
so if they had something in
Right.
front of them, they could see when looking at the draft.
And then
of the
I
ordinance.
went out of town, you went out of town, and Mike Yeager wanted to meet with somebody and discuss the fact that
You wanted parking meters still to stay on that.
he could not get beyond the fact that we were giving up 8 parking spaces. Not just, I don't think it had anything to do with the revenue, it was just the 8 parking spaces.
I have a little bit of a different
So
conclusion from that.
Jim, bless his heart, agreed to meet with Mike, because Jim was in and out of town also, but he came in town and met with them. They actually sat on the porch of the Batter and had coffee because,
We actually increased the Mad Batter's
I hope
revenue
it
by
was jam-packed on the road.
a few bucks. No, it wasn't. We're talking about the Monday before Christmas.
and it was freezing cold.
And it was windy and cold, and it was just a nasty day outside. And Lorraine joined us.
The rain joined, and like Stacy said later, if she had known Lorraine is not going to vote
I heard that.
because apparently her mother still owns the property at
On the end of the
corner
street.
of Jackson and Beach, and she manages her mother's affairs. The sister, I think, runs the business that's there. So Lorraine is going to abstain from any vote, if anything to do with Jackson Street. And Stacy said later, if she had known that, she would have asked Maureen to come.
Yeah, I think the objective was to get as many council members
Right.
familiar with not only the ordinance, but the arguments and the location
So
and all the things
ordinance
they.
was pulled from the first meeting in December, and then it was also pulled from the second meeting in December. And part of the reason with the second meeting was the fact that if by any means it did get approved, it did get the 3 votes that it needed, when it came back for final approval, Maureen would have had to abstain because she wasn't present for the first vote.
Okay,
So that would have been 2 people abstaining, which meant that the other 3 people
gotcha, right.
had to vote yes.
See, I mean, that
They had
is,
to have 3 votes.
that is absolutely a crazy facet of what, I don't take it to be an expert in municipal law, but it is a totally crazy thing that the membership of a council is determined by the individuals, and someone not present for a first vote can't vote on a second vote. I think that's just bizarre. It certainly defies anything in private practice. A director is a director. A fiduciary is a fiduciary, whether he is in the beginning or he is later, he votes, be that as it may. That was probably a rationale. It is pretty clear that she was having difficulty assembling enough people whose views were sympathetic. And for your purpose, for your sakes and our own, I tried in the meeting on Monday to see what the reasoning was, if there was any reasoning behind why there was so much hesitation. And I think it was really kind of a mixed thing. I mean, Lorraine was there for information, and I think she understood completely how things would work. The ordinance created, had it been introduced and passed, would have created pretty large loading zones, as we anticipated, because those loading zones were.
A large loading zone at the end of the street, and then individual loading zones.
But the,
for the-
right,
for the
but the 8
valet
meters
parking.
disappearing meant that, and being dedicated to loading zones means that the loading zone area
Right.
overall was
The
substantially
overall
increased.
area,
Now, in talking it over, I mean, Mike was the most interested in it. He was a voter. He was newest to the scene. And there were some initial threshold issues. And his first points to me were, why are you making recommendations relating to parking on Jackson Street without having it part of your overall plan of additional transportation augmentation? And I tried to explain that not only did this have a long 3-year tail to it, but he could be sure that the first recommendation we would make for any transportation route that covered Jackson Street was exactly what we were making now. So it was something we wanted to get done, regardless of whether it came out now or 3 months from now, as part of a larger report. So I mean, I tried to explain that. I think there was less concern about, in fact, there was really no real concern about the loss of revenue, but the loss of convenience of the 8 spaces for people seeking to park on Jackson. Again, it was that same round and round, as we said in the explanatory piece. It's necessary to move the functions to the west side. It's necessary to increase the overall loading zone capacity in order to make that street free and flowing. And that's what we judged to be. You could quibble with us whether it was 6 or 8 or 5, but this is what we judged and recommended was the thing to try. It was me just sort of preaching our line without really, I think, a positive response other than, yes, okay, I see what you're saying. So I think we left with them in possession of the fact, with Mike Yeager in possession of the facts, but not necessarily in agreement with what we were doing. I can't say I understand why. because all of us have been through this so long that it appears impossible for there to be a feeling that saving some parking spaces is a good thing to do relative to freeing up the space on
The
the street.
recommendation that they walked away with was that Mike wanted to see this as part of our transportation plan recommendations, which is easy to do because, one of the first points that we had laid out were the routes that we want to implement.
Instead, you can't do it without Jackson Street, so. I
Well,
mean,
you can't do,
can't do
you
them
can't do
all.
the first choice we have without Jackson Street, but his comments included, well, you haven't given me any other options, right? So if we had a Plan B with respect to another route, he wanted to see that also.
Well, the way I feel, though, this Jackson Street thing's been going on now for how long? Let's get over that hump and then worry about the routes.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Well, except that's not the way Mike wants it. He wants to see the route. He wants to see our plan and see why improving the flow on Jackson Street is vital to that plan.
Well, my thing was, I told Jim this a little bit before the meeting started. I think we should get the chief of police in here, the fire chief, and for public safety, and maybe even a traffic specialist or whatever they would call themselves,
Good idea.
to say that, to go on the record and say it's vitally important that that lane is never blocked for police responses, EMT responses, fire responses. I can bring in pictures of when the Virginia was on fire. It was crowded. It was very crowded. The apparatus was.
And Bob, that speaks to something that we've all known is the real truth.
We
And
know that.
And we also know, though, that the freeing up of Jackson Street as a public safety matter is really independent of the routes that we propose. It's
Exactly.
true that the route
But the
route
thing is, my
vital.
point is, you get them on record, and then we can say to council, look, we had the chief of police in here, we had the fire chief in here.
That's a great reality.
Get them on record.
Otherwise, the
Fire lane, the whole length of the street.
otherwise, it's the whole thing is ludicrous.
And the other thing is, Bonnie asked me what a traffic specialist is. I don't know their title, and I don't know where we'd find one that had some degrees or
Well,
something in traffic.
there are professional traffic engineers who, for nice fees, would be willing to write you an opinion.
Which is
that
why
you-
the committee took it on, because
Exactly, we're back
we
to
didn't
that.
want to charge, have
But
the
on the,
city charge.
But I mean, we all know, I mean, anybody that's lived around here and used Jackson Street
But
knows.
but for the record, if the fire department says it's unwieldy, and the police department says it's unwieldy, and the ambulance says it's unwieldy, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck.
it must be Jackson
And as
Street.
far as
Yeah.
the
So, I mean,
spaces that you're going to lose,
Someone may, and
is
we,
that somebody's life or something worth it?
and again, they should look and see who's there and when they're there, and it's not done right. But I guess the only thing I'm asking now of this commission is that, so if they want to wait and see when we get this together, let's get the fire, police
yeah,
and
no,
stuff.
I
and
would,
then-
I
and
would
then be
propose,
done with this.
propose when we deliver the next head bashing against this issue on Jackson Street, it be the kind of report and recommendations, and attached to it are exhibits from the people that we've just mentioned. And I mean, it would be better, I think, to just, it makes a lot of sense to prepare a report that's backed up by exhibits.
That's a brilliant,
and so-
it's a brilliant, it's right. It's
So if you make an assertion, you want to back it up with some authority. And so our next report will have opinions of police chief, opinions of fire, opinions of EMS.
What else don't we communicate right? No, what I'm saying is, that's a failure to communicate big time if you get those people, then the city council doesn't.
And you have to, I think you have to also acknowledge, aside from just the overall public safety issue, and that is, we see the lanes being cleared by moving the functions to the west side of the street.
That's a safety issue in itself.
It's nonsensical to have some things happen on the left, other things happen on the right. They both block traffic, and therefore you're stuck in the same quagmire. So it has to be the case that whoever believes that the increased loading zones here will handle the issue has to accept the fact that all the activities, including valet parking, take place on the west side of the street.
Well, and it needs larger loading zones because when the loading zones, existing loading zones get filled up, then those big vehicles wind up parking in the middle of the street, like a trash truck.
Yeah, I'm
Just for the,
Delivery trucks.
yeah, you're right, and just for the record, so I hope we get these people in here, because I'm tired of this. This past week was maybe, I'm gonna guess, in Cape May, one of the busiest weeks ever.
It's incredible.
Oh, it was
So this is
crazy.
December, okay? I mean, we were maxed out, thank you very much, and everybody else, but the street was still, it's a cluster, and this is December.
Well, that's another good point. Going back a few years, we didn't have the crowds that we're having now, number one. But even if you really go back, to Virginia was shut down in the winter, I believe. It wasn't even.
Well, they
you know.
alternate, like
So-
right now Congress Hall's shut down.
So
they
now
go
it's,
over.
it's becoming very popular. You have the Virginia, you have the Mad Batter. There's a lot of traffic. And
I mean, I would,
it's
I would,
not like it used to be.
I would propose that in order to, I mean, unless you guys really want people in here testifying to this in front of this commission, and then we wind up doing, I would propose we just solicit them to deliver a written opinion, and we would use that. It'll cut our time, so that we can,
But I think we have to get them in here, and we have to explain to them what we're trying to do.
I think, yeah, I think we should do that. I
And
think
then, you know, and then
Well,
ask them.
I would suggest you, like we do that as a subcommittee. For example, you could sit,
Well, we can have them come to our next meeting,
But-
if we continue to have meetings on Wednesday.
if you want to stretch it, I propose we can just compress it, so that we take,
Do it
for example, let Bob and one other member sit with the chief of police and explain the situation and sit, whoever,
Work out an agreeable time, I'm in. You work out a time that,
it would be better if we handled it by, say, 2-on-1 assignments.
I'd tell you the truth, this is just my opinion, I think it'd be more impressive if they came and
the whole meeting.
the whole meeting,
And then they're on the record, too.
and they're on,
And
they're
opinions
the
on,
record.
opinions on the record, too.
They're on the, you know,
That's a good answer. I like that. He's pretty smart.
No, I've always known he's pretty smart, but it will, and that's fine. If you want to do it by live testimony tends to sort of drift this way,
well,
that way.
it's true, but no matter how it drifts, we can say they were in here, we explained it
Right.
to them, and they are for our recommendation.
And I can go on record and rant and rave about what I want, because I abstained in the original vote. And then it's on record again, so if I have to put
But
my,
we're never going to let you vote on this.
sorry?
We're never going to let you vote on this.
So when I put my valet parking on the left side of the street, next to the Virginian, then,
How about if we do this?
but again, with all respect, I'm just gonna be 72 tomorrow. I've been here
Thank you very
for
much.
40-some
What a youngster.
years.
What a youngster.
I'm getting very tired.
We know you are.
Just a baby.
But I'm just saying is, I'm just, you know, like, I'm just tired of,
But I
I'm
mean.
tired
that-
of Mickey
no,
Mouse.
I think we have a plan. It's
No, I
a
agree with you,
simple
but I'm saying,
plan.
let's do it. I agree.
What I would suggest is that you do the live thing, if you want to do it. I would also say that they can come in here, and I'd start them by giving them a written opinion that they are going to express, and I'd have them come in and elaborate on that in front of us.
Give them what we've already, as a committee,
Well, we'd give them the
Give them what
argument.
we've done.
Give them the argument, and then we'd give them
Right.
a draft of what we think they might want to say.
right,
Do we
it's
have
there.
a good sketch of the Jackson Street from Carpenter's Lane to the beach? Didn't
We
you
have
have
it-
one from 2 years ago?
I probably have everything from 2 years, 3 years ago. It was all color-coded.
But that
That's
should,
Excel,
that
and
should
that
be
was
part
the-
of, that
That's
should
part
be,
of the presentation.
well, that should be a handout that we could give to the chief of police, the fire chief, so.
Yeah, well,
Don't-
I think they've never seen the handout before, so
Probably
it's new to them.
Although.
That's
I
the
think
reason
the
we
chief
gotta get them in
Deacon was
here
at the
and
meeting.
explain the whole thing to them.
And again, you made, I don't know why, if you took your smart pills today, but the point you made about the Virginian and the fire, and the fact that I have pictures of that you couldn't get through, historical building, national landmark, and you've got a parking there and you can't get through, WTF?
Yeah.
I mean, you've killed the goose.
One other thing, when we're through doing the merits of this, because I think this is
Beating
just-
a dead horse.
This is just going to be another one of our attempts. It's going to be, again, better than the last one, but God knows how much
But
better you have
it's
to be.
gone on for so long, we got to get a resolution.
Yeah,
It's
there's-
one way or
There's
the other.
something going on here that defies common sense. I'm sorry, to me, it
But
defies common sense.
You're right, and the problem is, there's too many things going on in this city that defy common sense.
I mean, this committee works hard to make its recommendations, and it's made some good ones. I don't know that we've made any clunkers yet, but it's made some good ones. But the Jackson Street thing is a public safety issue that should have been handled independent of what we recommend.
Okay, so are we in agreement, we want to do it at the next meeting?
Yes.
I would say
Yeah, I think the next meeting, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would be.
I probably won't be here,
if
but
we stick with Wednesdays,
just kidding.
yeah, it'll be the 18th,
Of
January.
I like the idea of the safety part of it. In fact, I don't think we've ever really talked about that over the course of the years.
We talked
Going
about
into
it at
specific-
the early meeting in
I
December.
remember when some of the neighbors came out last year or the year, and one of them said that they could. Yeah.
It was 2 or 3 years ago.
They said they couldn't get an ambulance. Somebody was parked in his driveway, and someone had to leave his residence in an ambulance and could not because someone had parked
Blocking their drive.
blocking their driveway, and that was their real concern. And this would help, I think, alleviate some neighbors' concerns, like, we're
Well,
doing
do
this
we
to get
know
an
who
ambulance down that
was?
street.
Do we know who that was?
I don't remember.
He was one of the owners.
He was one of the the owners of the house across the street from,
The Puffin, wasn't it, one of the
there was a couple different
Yeah.
people.
That would be good.
None of those neighbors have come out since, right?
Hum?
None of the neighbors have come out since, even at they weren't at I sort of thought somebody'd be at the council meeting.
Well,
to-
because
Yes,
other
sir.
than our presentation, there hasn't been any discussion of it at a council meeting. But,
The ordinance was never introduced. Was not subject to
And-
any discussion.
as I recall, that was their main concern, people blocking their driveway.
Blocking their driveway, and it just stuck in my head when you said safety. This guy had said that someone in his house could not be taken out of his house in an ambulance because of the parking in his driveway. Now, I agree that that's the side of the street that all the parking would wind up on, but still, I would think we'd be going towards a neighbor's concern. Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And the fact that valet parking still exists on the wrong side of
Right.
the street. And it's against state law, it's like a lawsuit also waiting to happen.
There are 2 other things that came out from a reading of the draft ordinance, and one of them is something that we stuck with the recommendation of the number of spaces, right, at 8, reduction of 8 paid parking spaces. That seemed to me that someone was questionable. I said to Mike Yeager, 8 was what we thought was appropriate for the increase in space to accommodate the valet parking being moved and to increase the southern loading zone sizes. If we're wrong and there's extra space for a long period of time, change the ordinance. Don't start off with too small. Start off with what makes better sense
better
for the
to change
street.
it that
So I said that. And 2, the ordinance as it was drafted in draft form wasn't it had the spaces right, but it wasn't very clear whether they were permanent loading zones or daytime loading zones.
The wording was daytime loading zones.
That was the caption. But when you read the ordinance, it really didn't establish times.
I thought it did. And it didn't say exact times, but it did say daytime.
Well, right, but that could mean anything.
Well, I
So that's something else we might want to, in honing on the recommendation, what do we mean? Do we really mean full-time loading zones? Do we mean loading zones between X and Y? That's something we might have as a more specific recommendation. When-
And again, what you're saying it just, again, like another cup of coffee. If it's against the law to have a valet zone on that side of the street, why does the city of Cape May continue to have to violate a safety hazard in the
Is it
city?
against the law, though?
It's against the law to discharge.
discharge out of the
passengers
passenger
into traffic.
side into
Okay.
traffic. Yeah.
You can't stop and park on the left-hand side of the street and discharge a passenger on the right-hand side of your car.
That's the law.
Yeah.
Does the state of New Jersey, the legislatures have any pull in any of this?
It's a state law, isn't it? It's like a Title
Yeah,
39.
Title
whatever.
39.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a phone
It's
call.
it's enforceable by the police.
I'll make a phone call.
Yeah.
Two?
I'm getting tired of
When
this.
do most of the people check in and out of your hotel?
Well, as.
Is there a
Mark has
time that
said,
we could say, okay, it's loading zone?
Checkout time is,
After 4.
checkout time is 11. So you have Virginia, us, whoever else, so that's 40 to 50 rooms right there. So anytime after breakfast, or usually 11, 12, because the new people are coming at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So they're coming, there's no set time, you'd say there's a busier time.
There's no set time. It's even like we tried years ago with the garbage trucks to say, look, why don't you just come between 6:30 and 8:30? We'll give you extra money, this and that. They could never, there's too much traffic.
See,
too much-
to me, those parameters indicate these really should be full-time loading zones.
Yeah.
And not stuff that after 6:30 PM until 9:30
back to
PM
metered parking,
goes
yeah.
back to meter parking. It's crazy to try
I mean, to
and-
think
and-
so,
and deal.
and I'm sorry, but if the city would think that penuriously, then they're just off their rockers.
I'm sorry, what did you say? What was that adverb?
Yeah, what was that?
Penuriously,
Pen-
penurious.
Penuriously.
Well, maybe it's not an.
You mean as
penurious.
in
Cheap.
cheap?
Cheap. CHEAP.
That I know what that means.
I mean, if the city's, again, going to argue about that, and we already took that years ago, make us pay a few dollars, it's just beyond my eighth grade
You know,
education.
all that
Well, I
other
did-
stuff is okay, but when it comes down to life safety,
Right, no.
Yeah.
I mean,
that just wipes
did
out.
try to point out the fact that for the last umpteen years, because that's what I feel like, this committee has been looking at every place in the city that it could find parking locations, and in some instances has made recommendations where there's been increased paid parking.
Right.
Much more than the 8 little spaces on Jackson Street that we're worried about. So it can't be a revenue
No, so
issue.
barrister, what I'm saying then is, that's an excellent point. What is the smoking gun somewhere else? And if the city's going to be, and I'll go on record on this, as not listening to what's reality, then so help all of us.
Well,
because-
one of the council members, the new council member, was not there, so she didn't have the benefit of exploring these things. Obviously, they all got our support sheet, I assume.
What I'm saying is, have the fire chief, have the chief of police, have them and just say, here, showtime.
But it's unclear to me what, I haven't,
Change
I've
in the
talked.
wording on the grid does not mention daytime. The whereas
Yeah, no, which doesn't count.
says into daytime loading zones.
Yeah.
With 20-minute limitations.
The whereas
It
is,
doesn't mention daytime in the
Yeah.
wording on the grid.
and what it really should, I mean, I think what we're really saying here is, the concept of daytime is too limited. It really should
Yeah,
be
and I
full-time
think-
loading.
I think so too.
We said that because we thought maybe that would be a softer sell, but
I couldn't
enforcement-
tell you what the selling points of this are right now. And the other point is, we haven't really talked to most of the members of the council. So
Yeah, it's a new council.
Bonnie,
they're,
I'm wondering
one
if,
person.
It's true.
Bonnie, I'm wondering if the county has like a traffic specialist or something that we could talk to maybe ahead of time or something and get his ideas on this.
Do you know anybody to contact?
I'm sort of been out of touch with those guys. I don't know who's out
See,
there.
you know, and when Trish was our liaison, she had contact.
But in other words, there must be a width of a street that they feel is standard and maybe
well,
you know,
and Bob, also,
for parking on one side
these guys,
should have X number of feet
these guys follow,
opposite the cars, you know,
They-
something like that.
well, they have-
We don't even know. if
they
it's
have, they have those standards. They also have, flow rate standards, right? So the size of a street, what should be flowing down it. I mean, I remember that the
Well, that's
state
what I'm telling
classifies things as A, B, C, D, and by the time you get to D, nobody's moving at all. It's a parking lot kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, aside from the public safety contacts and support, and expertise, if we can find one.
Well, first of all, what I would do.
So are we
I
in
would-
agreement that we want them to be full-time loading zones? We don't want to mess with the daytime?
Yeah,
I think that's unanimous,
Yeah.
except for Mark.
Right.
Who-
I only want
yeah,
it from
but-
2 to 2:30 on every third Thursday of the fourth week of the seventh Sunday.
All right.
Bonnie,
Who
just
wants
let
to
me.
contact the police chief? And who wants to contact the fire chief?
Well,
And I will.
Well, I think we should probably, don't you think we should have the city manager?
Well, and-
Yes.
Well, he has to ask them to talk with us. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Well,
have to
and
do it through
I'll
the city.
contact him because he would also have the contact with the county.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest with the county. Well, they used to be freeholders. Each commissioner now has in charge of a certain department. There's one that I'm sure is in charge of the traffic or the road,
Transportation,
the roadways and so forth. And ask him if he has somebody in his department that,
Do you know which one it is?
I
Well, the
really
website will
don't.
probably give you the assignments.
Yeah, actually,
County website might give you the assignments.
Yeah.
The supervising
or you could just
commissioner.
call the main number in courthouse, the freeholder number.
But
I keep
I'm
saying
thinking
freeholder
in terms of access to the police chief, access to the EMS, those
city
can go
manager.
through the city manager to direct them to talk with us.
Yeah,
And if you want, I will take a crack at preparing, I won't call it an affidavit, but a written statement that they might be able to deliver,
Okay.
and they can speak to that.
and if we could get the drawing,
I'll see, I've got a lot of stuff.
Well, it's part of,
Yeah, it was that,
it's part of the PowerPoint.
yeah.
okay.
But that has an issue in the sense that it's not to scale, remember?
but,
It's an Excel, right? So every space is
So-
equal to every other space.
Yeah, but I mean, it gives you a pretty good idea of what we're talking about.
Well, are we going to use a PowerPoint when the chiefs are here?
I think you just hand them the piece of paper. It's obvious it's one, no,
Well, they haven't, I mean, they,
I'm just asking.
no, we could, only in the sense that, as we said before, they probably have not firsthand seen the color
I don't really know.
presentations that we,
Whatever makes sense, I'm sorry.
And you
have no
have a
idea.
I forwarded a copy.
I have that, yeah.
You might be right, Bob.
Jim
I'm
probably
sorry.
has his
No,
leftover.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm just
that-
frustrated.
I like just.
Aren't we all?
Eyeball to eyeball.
100%, and we've all worked very hard, and
Well, and this falderall is really delaying our work in moving forward with the transportation routes and the other stuff that we wanted to get moving.
Well,
and you know what I think what you're saying is, I'd be happy, you make an excellent point. If we can excuse ourselves from being part of a committee and send a letter to the Star and Wave and the Herald, I don't know if I have to do that as a private citizen. I'm already fighting with half the city now, so I don't really care. No, I'm not sure. That's
No,
not true.
I think if we have done this in increasing pressure and detail, and the next step is, as you've just mentioned, adding expertise as exhibits.
Well, let's hope
to
that's
another.
positive and
But
works.
I don't think a publicity campaign makes any sense.
No, you're right. Let's see what happens. I'm just, right. You're right.
but,
Okay, I
but
will
when we go
contact
back to the
city
council,
manager,
we want to have our,
and I'll look to see if I
I
can figure out.
always try to. So can we try and say in the next 2 weeks,
Oh,
move,
you know what I
move along to,
Well, what I wanted to do was set up the field trip with
Oh.
Jane's car.
okay, well, that's available anytime.
Do we want to do it on Wednesday or Monday or?
any day except a rainy day.
I'm
Well,
not
I
here
think
next week.
we should do it earlier than,
And you know what was
because it gets
interesting?
dark early now.
And I forget where I was going, but I hit Lafayette Street on Saturday, maybe? And it looked like summertime.
Oh, it was crazy.
The traffic was all the
Did you
way.
drive down Beach Drive?
past
It's
Madison
bumper to
Avenue.
bumper.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely.
And my thought was, if
Parking
we,
to the cove.
yeah,
Every parking space was taken to the cove.
but my thought was, we're wanting a jitney to leave that parking lot at the school and go down Lafayette Street to Jackson. And then
can't make
turn
it.
at Jackson. They'd be sitting in traffic.
They can't make it because they can't get you on Jackson Street anyway.
And if we diverted them to Washington Street, then they'd have to go through the back of the mall.
Oh, and that light there is the most horrible light in the city.
Yeah, it is. It takes forever.
The Victorian Tower one, you can read a
It's
book.
not
there.
only that, but sometimes going down those streets behind the mall, cars are pulling out, they're waiting for a parking place to get in because somebody's going to back out. That can be Just
Yeah,
personally, I've run
yeah.
into that 100 times.
So the only alternative.
Not going to
we
be an
have-
express.
And not use Jackson Street, but have the jitney go in reverse. So go down Washington, turn at Ocean, go down to Beach, turn at Beach, and then turn at either Decatur or Perry.
Well, I hope, I hope there's no
Lafayette.
ulterior motive involved, but I got the distinct impression from Mike Yeager that he wanted to see a Plan B if we had one.
For that one route.
If there were going to be a new route introduced, that, and I, who knows why.
Well, we
but
have two
did we have
routes.
another option for him?
We have two new routes. The one is coming through the state streets to pick up all the people that live on the east side of Madison, to keep them from driving into town. And then the other one was the direct mall, from have people parking. Now, the State Street one goes to the lot we've recommended on Pittsburgh, and then goes to the mall, down Columbia Avenue.
Down Columbia.
Yeah, so,
Maybe there is no other option.
Another point of having it run down Jackson, the trolley is, besides being transportation, it's also a visual thing for,
oh, right.
people love to, that's why it's so slow traffic. Half the people in front of you are like, looking at everything.
Yeah.
They're in the trolley, not the trolley.
Remember,
That's
this
a whole
is
other
a jitney.
Jitney, yeah.
Okay.
But
This is the green
bringing
jitney.
people down that street has more than just transporting, letting people see.
Exactly.
Jackson, Hughes, Ocean, those are the big three streets.
Well, and-
People want to see it, and so you're
There could
helping
be
to draw the
people
tourists
that
in.
want to go to Jackson Street.
Yes,
And we
yeah.
can get them to park
Yep.
at the elementary school. So,
Yeah, I think it's important to have it run there. Even if there is a Plan B, I think that's the street it has to run down.
So
That's what-
maybe there isn't a Plan B. I mean, maybe there's.
Yeah, maybe there is no
there's
Plan B,
The 3 and 4 routes are, that one of the routes is necessarily Jackson. I mean, that could be the issue here.
Martin,
But
I know you
I-
live on Madison.
No,
Oh, you're on Commerce? Okay, I'm sorry. So
that's a long distance away.
Dave's on Commerce.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, Job is on Madison Avenue. Yeah. So you walk into town.
Well, anytime you want to use the car, I mean, I'll be glad to pile people in and we can go.
Do we want to schedule it for next Wednesday, the 11th?
Well,
Do you know Jane's schedule?
oh,
That might be important.
well, I mean, we should do it during the daylight hours, so it doesn't.
With our luck, there'll be a massive snowstorm.
But if we do that, no, it's fine. That's fine. Next Wednesday's fine.
That's
sure?
fine by me.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Again, I'm not here.
Yeah, you're off in the outer stratosphere.
I'm off somewhere in the outer limits.
So this is a field trip? We need
Yes.
permission slips from our parents?
Well, for insurance
See, you're the only one
purposes,
that
yeah.
has the ability to do that. There'd be no permission slip from my parents.
You have parents that are
I
still
have
alive?
one.
My father-in-law's still alive. Yeah, he lives with me.
My
God
dad's
bless.
still alive.
97.
God bless.
That's 99. Well,
Incredible.
keep coaxing him to the next October
Well,
12th.
what time do you want to do it?
Oh, how about 11 a.m.?
That's fine. That will be fine.
That sound good?
My usual response is I'll go if a luncheon is provided.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll just throw that out there. If there's one day that you would like to have a dog and pony show on Jackson Street, like on the weekend or something, then I will, can't do,
Are they
What-
closing? I know you're closing on what, the 16th?
for 2 weeks, but what I'm saying is I would invite the committee and whoever from the city council, you pick a time and just have breakfast while I watch the chaos or something in there, that they can say, wow.
All right,
That's a
where do we
really
wanna
good
meet?
idea. Like,
Sorry?
you sit in your place, you watch the people, it's like,
Can't get in this parking lot. during
holy
the day.
crap.
Well, how
Yeah.
about the new parking lot?
Okay,
By the,
okay, we'll
By
meet at
the-
the Welcome Center, 11 a.m. on Wednesday, January 11th.
I may have a chauffeur, so.
And we'll visit our routes as recommended.
okay.
Do
All
you,
right, so
do you have
that's-
an outline of those routes that I could just read?
Yes, it was in the document that I gave you. the Phase 1 document.
I must have been an exhibit. I'll check.
Bonnie, what Wednesday? This next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday. That's before your semester starts, right? Take advantage of you while it starts there, Route 1,
You're absolutely right. You just blew right by me.
Ah, interesting.
Route 2, Route 3, and Route 4.
Okay,
Okay?
I will reread.
Okay, so that's settled now. Bonnie, here's a suggestion I would think we should make. I think we should have, in this case, I think we should have a subcommittee and include whoever the city manager wants to work with us for signage, for east of Philadelphia Avenue for that free parking, you know.
I agree with you, Bob, but we have to present Phase 1, and that's included in Phase 1.
Well, here's
whole
the thing that I
educational
worry
thing.
about. Some of the stuff is gonna cost money, and
Whether it's in the budget.
is
yeah.
in the budget. We've gotta get an idea of what we want. And-
Yeah, it's summer now. I mean, if
Eh?
you want to start getting signs made up, you know, we got to get this
That's why
going.
we have to do the
That's-
Phase 1 presentation.
Well,
They
that's
can't
why
wait.
I was suggesting that we get a subcommittee. I don't know whether Casey from Convention Hall would work with us, or.
You know what, it was-
I don't know.
We don't have a marketing person.
Well, she's about the closest thing, I think.
Her title is Manager of the Convention Hall.
Well, whatever,
and
yeah.
Related activities. I met with Joe Picard
Well,
the last time.
Eric would
so-
probably meet with us, but
Because they can make some signs to certain,
Yeah.
size within the
well,
department.
that's another thing. I mean, we've got to get ideas of what kind of signs we want. Do we
And
want
we
just
just don't need
the
signs, we
sterile
need-
kind that, or do we want something a little flashy that,
Well,
you
and
know,
it-
we've talked all about this before, and it just, we're like spinning our
Yeah,
wheels.
we just have to
on
say,
it.
okay, this is the sign, this is what we're going to do, and let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
even,
wrong, or indifferent.
we talked about a logo. I mean, we got to get these things down, if you know what I mean, underway.
Well,
what-
and
The time's going to run out fast.
the budget issue goes to Amtrak.
Well,
Well, I know what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend free transportation and as many signs as possible. I mean,
Well, and it's not just signs. I mean, we need written word.
well,
we
well,
need
and whatever
publications, and-
budgetary measures are necessary to support a transportation system. And I mean,
Well-
personnel to run it, because I don't think the city manager's got enough pockets to simply to do the whole job of a system that we plan in this size. I think we're going to require an increase in personnel to do this right.
well,
It's clear to me.
but
There's
if you're
just
going to
aren't
do
enough
that,
bodies.
then you definitely have to get in on the budget.
I get it, and we said this 2-3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I would, I'd just create an entry that foresaw a few $100,000 to do this.
Well, why don't we just have a meeting with the city manager? We could set up a meeting, like 2 or 3 of us. Bonnie, I'll be glad to go with you and talk to him. Jim?
If it takes M-Track to.
Well,
to-
M-Track
to-
is sort
to
of,
re- To recommend that what we're saying
they're
makes
always
sense.
trying to get revenue.
Well,
they're
I'm
not-
trying to
We
spend,
don't even know what we
Yeah,
need
you know,
yet.
I'm trying to
So how
spend-
can
I'm
we
trying-
go to them.
I'm trying to spend stuff.
We gotta figure
Well,
out,
their task when this committee was reactivated was that we would design the routes and then Amtrak would fund them.
Or find,
doesn't have any money.
well, just they have to make recommendations for sources of funding.
And one of the things, I know that we, at the last meeting, we had talked about having Stacy go back and ask Amtrak to, and we can't ask them, I guess city council has to ask them, to reexamine the performance parking.
Well, that's all well and good.
Because we
Here's
need
what I think
something,
we
and
should do.
it's some, and Mark brought it up at the last meeting, was to give people more of an incentive to park at the elementary school or to park on Pittsburgh Avenue.
Well, I'm not against that. I think that's fine.
It's a no-brainer.
But, yeah.
Yeah, so was Jackson Street.
But here's what I think.
No-brainer.
So
why
was
we're
Jackson
here.
Street.
It's a no-brainer.
I just,
You taking
let me,
notes, Mark?
let me throw this out.
You can quote me.
I think that we should get at least a rough idea or a rough budget of what we want, or at least things that we want. How much is the jitney's going to cost? How much is the signage that, you know?
But see, we weren't charged with budget.
Well, okay.
We were
But if
to
you don't-
ask for everything.
Well,
And
the other,
then-
the other thing, Bonnie, is you have a brand-new council, you might as well say. You know, that, I don't think they were all there.
Only one new person.
But not all of them the initiation of the original jitney system. You got big turnover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big
they
turnover.
weren't there originally with the, anyhow,
and-
that's just a suggestion. I think you have to have something on a piece of paper that you can say to the city manager, look, this is what we're gonna need.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea to
But
make
we
as
need-
one of the phase
We
one.
need the rough draft.
No, but
Phase
I would, in phase one, I would say, budgetary items. The committee estimates that approximately $327,400.26 will be necessary to begin
Well,
these phases.
I mean, you know, we all smile and sort of joke about it, but I can't see going ahead with all this stuff, and then it gets to a point, and they pass a budget, and they say, well, you know, we don't have any money in the budget.
Raise the parking meters.
Well, do what?
Well, I mean,
It paid for the jitney the last time.
I mean, it's just like, it's
Plus-
just like common
plus
sense.
jitney and other stuff.
Right.
There was that much increase in revenue.
It's
from
just
the
like
original.
business, it's a fact of life. I mean, if this year I said, because what I am, I'm gonna leave my prices the same when I can't get any help and I have to pay time and a half, what do? You have to raise your prices if you wanna
Well,
stay in
the thing
business.
is, I
The
think
city needs
that's,
that for parking.
that's when M-Track comes in, when they have to look for some money. And that would be part of their job, to recommend they raise the parking meters or whatever.
Well,
That's
again,
really
in a review of what we're going to submit, as if it turns out to be the last item before phase two, you know, I would go back at them again with respect to parking pricing. I would say they got to go back, and they need to look at the way parking is done here, and whether or not there is additional benefit to be gotten from something like performance parking.
Well, the other thing is, we could ask, well, we sort of talked to Dennis, I think, at one point, but we got to really nail it down and say, Dennis, you know, we're going to count on you to come up with some money, but I don't know, I think it's like,
And see, I don't,
nobody understands that
No,
budget,
but you're right,
budget
because-
goes in,
because M-Track doesn't discuss budget. They discuss ways to
Make-
add money to the
yeah,
budget.
right.
So, all right, well, let me see what I can do about getting some sort of a meeting with Mike.
I'll begin revisions on your draft
Phase one.
for phase one, adding a couple of things we talked about here.
And you were gonna do a
I will,
draft for the,
I will begin looking at the way we can get supporting statements in writing to which these folks can come and speak live to why Jackson Street is needed to be.
A question too, excuse me, didn't I do a video of the parking chaos on Cape May?
You're asking
on
us
Jackson
if you
Street?
did a video?
Yeah, I think you
You
did.
did.
had a lot of.
Your son did it or something, I think.
You
right?
did.
I think there was a video that was so many seconds long. If you could look back and show that to them, because it was done. I mean, I've done everything in my life,
Sounds familiar. I
Yeah.
think one of your children did it.
yeah, and I can ask
That's
them
what
to,
I
but we did a video. I know, because I paid money for video, you know, it's like, I've done everything, you know. Even
Pay
going
for an
on,
hour, and your kids did 5-minute video.
well, even going back on record to Captain Boyd. It's probably on recording. I said, this is back in the 1970s, maybe 80s?
You mean
No,
Chief
80s.
Chief Boyd?
Yes. And Chief Boyd said there's no parking problem on Jackson Street. And he said, I have men under surveillance checking out the situation. And I was on a call with him, Fred Cauldron, and myself.
Boy, you're really going back.
Yeah, I'm going back. I'm just telling you how
I'll
I've
say.
been involved with it. So I said, if you have these people under surveillance, then you saw me going down the mall in high heels and a dress and a wig, because I don't believe you. I mean, I said that to them at that point, because, you know, it was always lip service.
Well, I just think we
Think of that visual there, okay?
got to get something
It's
nailed down on whether it's on paper or at least talk to Mike
Yeah.
and say, Mike, who is going to work with us to get some of this stuff straightened
mean,
out?
I
know it's fine to say, well, we just want you to do the routes. Well, that's about a third of what,
No, I think a huge step is, we gotta come up with signage. We have to come up with signage.
you got to get this stuff done.
And I don't know if signage
Well-
is the most important way for
Well, we
getting
can,
people, or if it's online.
I mean, we can,
A website.
when we get our reports together, and it actually is a unified thing with 7 or 8 things that are recommended, it seems to me we can second people from this committee to work in the beginning to start kicking off
Well, we got
what
to
has
at
to
least
be
give
done.
them
But-
ideas of what we want. I mean, I think we could have a contest at the school.
Exactly, that's what I was
To
thinking.
come
Design
up
it,
with
right,
a
exactly.
logo, you know, say, this is for a bus route,
Yeah,
a transportation
exactly.
system. Give them all these,
Well, right, but down the road, you don't propose to do that in the next 3 months.
And
Right.
I have another point, please.
You never raised your hand before.
Well, I have. For since Cape May is such a low-income city, with all the McMansions and all that other stuff,
Actually,
it behooves me to ask why then the city would have a problem if they raised the meters so much when the houses from when I started here and now are multi-million dollars. So who are they worried about? Is that they don't want to put parking somewhere else in the city? But I meant, you've got McMansions everywhere. And you're going to say to them, oh, you have to spend an extra $8 to park downtown? Oh,
Well, I don't know that there's really any new intelligence on that from the last time we tried performance parking. Without going too far afield, the general reaction was, hey, your increases are just really high compared to what we're used to seeing. And then we really looked and saw that
They weren't.
relative to other communities,
Right.
and people from New York and Philadelphia and Washington and Baltimore didn't give a fig about what our rates
Exactly.
were
No
going
one
to be.
even knows what it
Exactly.
costs to park. They're pulling into a parking
I
space,
mean,
and they're
I'll
worried
put
about
it-
what it costs later.
Right,
They have no
I'll
idea
put it
what
another way, okay? I'll just put it again, on the record. I told my children, because labor is so expensive, and it's not a question of I want to be, Bernie Sanders' best friend this week. You have to raise prices so that we can pay people. And they say, well, what are people going to say? They want to eat at the Mad Batter. I've got to make a living. I'm not trying to gouge people, but I have to recognize the fact that things are more expensive. When we're trying to accomplish a transportation
It's called
system,
inflation.
it's called,
It's hitting all of us.
right, so I meant, it's not like, this is not a poor man's town.
No, that's for sure.
So it's not like, ooh, what are you going to do to my budget? I
At
spent-
least a vacation, poor man's.
And like other-
Living here-
Reality,
here-
The income level of the full-time residents of this town is low, which is why we qualify.
Right, well, that's Victorian Towers.
well, it's everything. I mean, the county as a whole.
Yeah, I'm saying that's the biggest voting block.
Retirees,
If
I mean, they
I'm-
should give you special dispensation. I'm not saying, I'm just joking now, but it's ridiculous what the city,
In terms of the ranking in the 20 counties in New Jersey, it's my recollection, Cape May County is about third lowest in median
I'd
income.
say Cumberland's probably the
Yeah,
lowest.
it's third.
which one? Okay,
And we're the oldest in median income.
okay, so Barrister would say, look at the average house price in Cape May, and we're not the third lowest ranking Cape May, we're an anomaly.
but those aren't full-time residents.
Yeah, those people don't live here.
Yeah, but they still pay their taxes and still, I mean, they're building all this stuff.
They're residents, but they're not domiciled here. I mean,
Bonnie, I'd like to make another suggestion, and I'll be glad to try to get some things. But I think we should make a list. I know I'm crazy on these lists, but a list of things we want to, if you're going to go by yourself or with Jim, I don't care, or I'll go with you, I don't care. We go to the city manager, we're going to go over, for instance, the parking area on Pittsburgh Avenue. What are we going to recommend there? we should have a paragraph of what we want to recommend.
Well, it'll be in
Yeah, it's
the
one of
phase one.
recommendations.
Okay, well,
And it'll be the east side of
well,
Pittsburgh.
what I'm
to
saying
a
is, we
depth
have a
of-
list of things when we go to talk to him
I think it's
to check off.
it's called
And we
an,
go over, boom, 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 boom.
it's called an agenda. And-
Well-
And we'll have one. I mean, we should. It'll be a short form.
Jim's gonna
It'll
build
be a
it
short
out.
form
Because
of what we're doing
we gotta
here.
know who's gonna work with us within the city framework. You know, is it the guy does the striping and the signage over at Public Works? You know, then you have to go through the superintendent of Public Works, Eric, to get to him.
And there's no reason why we should exclude, Mike from information that we're going to be preparing for council. So either there's an agenda, a short form, we can sit down with him and talk, or there's a draft of this whole phase one document that he can sit and thumb through with us. I mean, either
One
one.
of the things, and it wasn't in the original verbiage, Jim, but Bob had mentioned it at the last meeting, it's gonna need lighting in that parking lot, and that's an expense.
Yeah, I mean, we're chock full of expenses.
Well, that's why I
but we-
say this budget's very important, if we're gonna do it this summer.
And one thing I will.
Can anybody here state where the budget is at this point of
I
January
have no
4th?
idea.
It's had input from department heads, that's all I know. One of the things, and I mentioned this to Mark at the Christmas luncheon, because Mark was concerned that there's always been a waiting list for the permits at Bank Street. There's currently no waiting list.
Which is amazing, which means that so many bed and breakfasts went out of business.
No, it means that
No,
they
no, I
expanded the
think you're
amount
right.
of,
That's what I believe.
well, that could be, but they expanded the number of permits that they sold this
But-
past year.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, I know for years, there were so many bed and breakfasts in so many spots. Basically, we out-yeared them because we've been doing it for so long. And that's one of the things, every year in January, whatever it is,
Well,
make sure we.
you were there every year, every time.
Yes.
All the time.
Every
And they
time.
came sometimes, and sometimes they went out of business, and other times they said, hey, this year we're not going to even try.
And you,
So
you
all in
one thing
all,
I noticed, I don't know if it
Right.
was in the
you
documents for
moved
the
up.
city council meeting, but the permits for Jackson Street lot went on sale this week. But the permits for the Bank Street lot don't go on sale until April? Or March?
I don't, I'd have to ask my Pam about that. I don't know anymore. I'll ask her. But that's pretty amazing to me that Bank Street no longer has a wait. I mean, that means that there's more and more people that are turning their houses into single-dwelling
Full house rentals,
McMansions.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they're also, they're generally single dwelling, but that could then become an Airbnb. Like a lot of them right around center of town there have
I mean,
no longer be.
It's not gonna make things easier when you have an Airbnb and you have 16
No,
people.
that's what I'm getting
No,
to.
because
And then
they bring
if you have a
down three
hotel, you
families,
have to have a
they
certain
have
amount of
3 or
parking,
4
correct?
cars.
Right.
You have to have a certain, but if you have an Airbnb, you don't.
Yeah, so I meant,
Just a private resident.
You're just a private
so
resident.
what's the good news?
There is no good news in it, I'm just saying.
This was-
There's no good news. I'm saying
The
it's
bad news is we need more parking spaces.
Right, so I mean, it's like, so make people pay. Set up something, take the money and tell the city to build something for the kids, that they have something to do, instead of they worry about them smoking marijuana and drinking on the beach. Take,
It's legal now.
it is, but they still get, I mean, it's
Not
enough.
on the beach.
All right,
It's
racing
it's in
fast
Spa-
cars down Lafayette Street.
I mean, this has been a problem for as long as I've been here with my kids. Take the money and dedicate so much money so the kids have some other things to do. You know, if you don't want to just spend it off for parking. But I remember Jerry Indevice, God bless him, would sit down with my kids because they were picketing somewhere because they had nothing to do. You know, free foie gras.
Or Vicky Tryon would pick up your son and
Right.
make sure he was going in the right.
But I meant, put it as part of a package. We want to help the city. We want you to set up some more after-school programs using the police and this and that.
If you're talking about raising more revenue, holy cow. If the meters had been on along the beachfront this weekend, I've never seen that many people in a.
Right, and why not?
Yeah, leave the meters on till.
And why not,
till
so we're
you're
not
everywhere.
arguing about 8 spots on Jackson
You
Street?
know what, I'll tell you why not, because for year after year, after Labor Day, they would take the meters out. It was
Oh,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
you know, and I think they were trying to keep them out of the weather through the winter.
Absolutely, and the situation's gotten
Like,
worse.
I'm telling you,
for-
it was bumper to bumper. They would have made a fortune.
Paid
You
parking,
could not, Thursday, I think it was, I went, or Thursday or Friday, I tried to go to the Acme, could not find a parking space in
Yeah.
that lot.
There you go, that's instant money.
Because
Yeah.
well, paid
Curtis
parking in the
doesn't
future will not be meter
Being
parking, y'all.
being a local,
right. I mean,
you
that's
knew where to go.
crazy.
But,
Right.
you know,
Well, I'll tell you, we drove down Beach Drive there a couple times. It's busier than summer.
yeah.
So why wouldn't the city say, here's an easy revenue source? You want to come to, I go to
We
Philadelphia.
haven't even approached them, so we don't know.
I understand, but so far they seem very unapproachable.
Well, they may be, and heaven knows why, when they redid the resolution, we got turned into a transportation system, and the whole parking aspect
Well, because,
got
you know,
left
at some
behind.
point, yeah. it's-
That in itself was, I don't,
I mean, they think they're dealing-
inexplicable.
They think they're dealing with people who have nothing better to do with their time than just to come here and fart around. You know, I mean,
Well-
it's like,
You know.
I mean, how else do you say it? You know, you're supposed to say, please pass the resolution?
Well,
How
I
many
mean,
years?
at some point,
Okay.
you know,
I'm gonna.
you
I'm
make
gonna contact
recommendations,
the
and if
city
they're
manager,
ignored,
set
then
up a
you
time
believe
for
that.
meeting, And if you two would join,
I'll be glad to. Yeah.
and then we'll ask him at that meeting if we could get the police chief and the fire chief to come to our regular meeting.
That's wonderful.
Okay, I will do,
You know,
I w-
sometimes I think we get things backwards because we go to council. We should go to the city manager. He's responsible for the day-to-day operation of this form of government. He sets things up
City
and then
council.
he takes it to
I was
council.
gonna say, but city council
Yeah,
ultimately
you're right.
has to.
We go to council, we present to them next,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna go back and say,
But
oh, well, let's go back to
under
the
this form
parking.
of government, we should be going through him.
You're right again, Bob.
well, in the case,
Raise your salary for this month.
in the case of efficiency, that is the way it should work.
Yeah.
I do get the impression sometimes that without that, I'm telling 5 different stories, I'm approaching 5 different people, I'm getting 5 different perspectives, and it's just blowing my mind that I have to address
And we've given,
everybody with something
and
different.
you're right, he's right, we've given city council, if you have a city manager, then their mandate is to do what's best for the city. And they should, on recommendations from the city manager, they should say, this is what should be done. So you're right, you're giving 5 different people, well, I'm not sure about that, we're gonna lose $32 in parking this week.
no, there was never a comment.
No,
I'm just saying how, again,
You
I'm
know,
just,
he may want to have, you know, he's like the boss, but he may want to have the deputy city manager sit in with us.
Well, and
So
Lou-
that he really carries out the functions, you know, it's
Yeah,
like,
and Lou is already aware of our want
Yeah.
for Pittsburgh Avenue, because you already talked to him.
but I mean, the strategy's here, now we got to carry this thing out.
Okay. We're gonna meet with Bob at the Welcome Center next Wednesday for our field trip,
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
I'll bring snacks.
and you'll get the letters.
If it's a
you'll get
long
the
trip.
letters,
I'll get the
You get the permission slips?
permission slips to give to your parents.
You have another bag of pretzels I can bring along?
I will call the city manager, see if we can set up some time to meet with him. And Jim is going to work on the documents.
What's the end of the month council meeting date?
It's, what was the 3rd, the 14th, the 17th? 14th and 14th?
Well, there are holidays, right? So the 17th,
16th is a holiday.
yeah, so the 17th is their second meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, we ain't gonna do nothing till February in terms
Yeah.
of getting in front of council.
Yeah. But, like Bob said, maybe the city manager will get things organized.
That's a good idea.
Okay?
Bueno.
Otherwise, Bob, I can't squeeze into my army uniform anymore. I can't do any subterfuge.
I'm still waiting for the high heels, the dress, and the wig.
Okay,
Thank
so,
you for
I
driving.
can see that.
I didn't drive it, but I was in it.
Oh, you were in
all
it.
right, our next meeting is the 18th. Do we want to keep it at 5:15, or do we want to move it up earlier?
I think we should move it a little earlier, I don't know.
Like 4, 3?
I think 4 o'clock.
It's fine.
Okay, 4
4
o'clock?
o'clock is good.
Okay,
Next meeting, the 18th, 4 PM.
4 o'clock is good.
there you go.
I think
Martin, would you like to say anything?
Well, I don't know that there is an off the record, by the
I mean,
way.
they can't hear you.
Did you turn on the live stream?
I'm sorry? Okay,
Did you live stream this?
yes, I did.
Okay, so you need to turn that off if he's going to speak
And you
off
can
the record.
all turn off your mics.